Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And those of y'all that are in the car right now, get home, open up your YouTube, and go over to the Cam and Otis Show and follow the Cam and Otis Show. And when you get to this episode about the Rugby World Cup, go ahead and click the like button. It's right there. And then the subscribe button is right there, unless it's this way, because it might be the mirror effect. But just know the subscribe button's oval shaped and the like button looks like a thumb. And if you're watching us, just think Gig 'em Aggies and click that thumb. Right, Camden?
Oh yeah, I know. I was trying to think of a spin to put the Wildcat in there, but I got nothing. So we're just gonna move on from that.
Well, it's like it's showing the shape of the subscribe button.
There we go. There we go. But no, I'm excited. I'm excited for today. Always great to have a family episode. I know we're moving up towards 300 episodes, and so it's always good to get back to our roots. Just us two, right?
That's right. That's right. And talking about something that we both have a huge passion for, rugby, and right in the middle. And those of you who are on the YouTube can see my rugby ball from the World Cup 2019. And the reason that ball, if you look really close on YouTube, I don't know, it might be tough. Put it on your big 86-inch screen.
I was gonna say we got 4K. Come on.
That's right. Your 4K 86-inch screen, and you see that rugby ball, you'll see a bunch of signatures on it. And that's from the USA Men's Eagles team. Right after I ran them through a team building camp that, the reason you don't know about that is because it didn't do anything to help them win, because they still ain't won a game in the World Cup.
But they were
some other teams.
They were so meshed together, though. That's what, when everyone in USA Rugby is talking about, just the quality of the team environment that they were in on their way to go lose all those pool games.
Yeah. We're not going to go down the USA Rugby hole.
No. Because we're talking World Cup.
Because every time I feel myself nowadays, I just stop. I say, nope, not going there, because that's not a happy place for me. But the World Cup, and let me tell you, watching South Africa, Ireland play on Saturday with about 60 of my closest South African fans, and my one very, very close Irish fan, and an Englishman too. But the Englishman was holed up with the South Africans, which I was very confused about that. But he was
just playing with the numbers, I think.
Yes, and if Coach Jimbo was in charge, the score would be much higher right now. Would have finished much higher, because he was not happy with a couple of decisions that the Irish made, and the way they played with some quick offloads, turn over the ball, some kicks at the end. Yeah. But then again, we all know Coach Jimbo, and it's about stay in and the scrum. Those that's Jim's coaching philosophy.
Oh yeah, either kick it to the corner or take the scrum option every single time. You could have it. You could be down 2 points right in front of the post, get the penalty. Jimbo's calling for the scrum.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Scrum.
I agree. I think it's really funny. I think I talked with a lot of my fellow rugby coaches, and talked with you after the Wales-Fiji game. And we were all talking about how that was the most entertaining game of rugby we've watched in a very long time. And it sure was. I still stand by that. But I'm making sure I'm very particular with my words of entertaining, because that was the most entertaining game. If you don't know rugby and you watch that game, it would be so much fun. You'd enjoy every second of it. South Africa, Ireland was a little bit different. It was a little bit more for us. It was a little bit more for the rugby environment, the rugby family, right? And I thought that was the really enjoyable thing of just seeing the stylistic matchups, right? This is the best part about any of the World Cups. You get these really different styles of play from different corners of the world. And I always think it's so interesting that you see the specialization, especially you talk about, Ireland with their, offensive rugby, some of the best offensive rugby in the world. You talk about South Africa with their defense and their forward pack, doubling down on the forward pack with the 7-1 split on the bench, all of those kind of things of the specialization.
The bomb squad.
The bomb squad.
The bomb squad.
But I think it's so interesting that you get so much specialization in those different directions. But then the thing that's really stood out to me so much in this World Cup, one, the parity is getting so much closer, which is an amazing thing. But then mainly it's that you have to have comprehensive rugby. You know, even if you have your strength, you still need to put it together each single time. Even if you are the best in the scrum, best in the lineouts, whatever it is, if you can't use that to go get points on the board, then it doesn't really matter. You know, if they're able to hit you back in your strength and you can't figure something else, it doesn't really matter. I think that's the thing that stood out for me from that game, is that you have to be able to play the full comprehensive game of rugby.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of the game of rugby, right? There's and really, truthfully, in any true team sport, if you're not good in all phases, I mean, you could talk NFL, the same thing, right? If you're not good in all phases of the game in the NFL, offense, defense, specialty teams, then you're going to lose. Rugby, I just think it's much more blatantly obvious, because even though not even though, because there are 15 players per side, so you got 30 dudes out there on the pitch. That is, I mean, it's big. It's bigger than a football field. It's wider than a football field, a little bit longer, but it feels, it looks and it would sound crowded. But I think that's part of the beauty of the game, is because it is such a team sport. You cannot be a specialist. You can be really good at lineouts, and you know what the other team's going to do? Well, they're just going to figure out, one, a way not to give you lineouts, and two, they'll figure out a way to counter it. And there goes your one thing that you were good at. Or, you know, you name it, spinning the ball to your wing. You got a great wing at that level. And this is the other thing that you see at this level compared to when I was coaching at the high school level. Because at the high school level, you could still pretty much have a Seth Hollyman, right? You give Seth the ball, and boom, he's gone, right? I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of real rugby. We like to think there was for our level at high school, but in the end, it was give Seth the ball, let him run. Give Seth the ball, let him run. That was the kind of rugby we played, right? At that level, at this high level, the differentiators between the players is so small, such micro differences that it doesn't take anything. It's just. I mean, it could be go back to Lewis Moody and the bowl of porridge today had, you know, one scoop too few of sugar or something like that in him. So his performance level went from 98.9% to 98%, and that caused them to lose the game. I mean, it's that close of a matchup, and I mean, I think for U.S. folks who aren't rugby fanatics, it's just like the NFL in that sense. I mean, the NFL, those guys are at such a high level of performance, unless you're a Denver Bronco, are at such a high level of performance that it's just the little bitty things that make the difference on the field, and that's that's at the Rugby World Cup, even the tier 2. Really, even the tier 2 teams, you know, Namibia lost 90 to nothing to France. Oh no, I think they scored a try, didn't they?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it was 96 here. I think you had it right the first time.
Yeah. So France just, I was trying to give them a little bit of credit. France really, really tore them up. But man, that difference, maybe it's not micro scale. Maybe it's, a quarter of an inch difference sort of things or something like that. It is that's the differentiator at that level.
Yeah, and I think that's the really interesting thing I think to your point, this is really all sports, but we're seeing it a lot at the World Cup right now, is the number at this level. It's a game of mistakes. And what I mean by that is it's how many mistakes are you going to make? How many mistakes is your team going to make? And then when the opposition makes a mistake, how are you going to execute on that? I think a really kind of a funny example from South Africa, Ireland is the kicking, right? I'm the forwards coach, right? I've lost mini a rugby game because I went to the corner over and over again, had the boys go to the corner for the line out, or took the scrum and we couldn't punch it in, and we should have just taken the 3 points, right? There was a game last year with U of A. I think if we did the math and it's like, all right, if we had just gone for post, we would have scored like 18, 21 more points, but we kept going for these different things, right? So you can have those kind of mistakes. But it's about what you're able to do with the opposition mistake, playing into your strengths, playing the smart game, all those different things. And I think what it really shows is that each one of those little reps matters so much, putting on my coaching hat a little bit. I think that's the big thing that you see is that, yes, to put on my little kids coaching hat for Engage, I always say, look, how many mistakes are there in a rugby game? Thousands, right? But it's about what happens with that mistake. When do you make that mistake? And how much can you work to limit those mistakes? The reason I tell the little kids that is because I don't want them to get down on themselves, because that's the way that you make more mistakes, right? Professional athletes don't tend to have that much trouble with it. But what I think is the really big key there is just how can you execute on top of other people's mistakes, and then when you're limiting your own, when you're limiting your own, choosing those spots in the right spot. I think it comes to mind of in the second half, South Africa versus Ireland, go into the corner, maul it in. Maul is a big strength of theirs. I think it's really interesting on that, though. You have a very strong maul, so you go back pod, you hit the maul straight up. Ireland knows you're mauling. They know that you need the try. They know that
everybody in the stadium knew that.
And so I think what's really funny, and you talk about those like little mistakes and those little calculations, is they hit a straight up maul. They didn't do a slip or anything. And I think that's really interesting because they said, look, we are better than you at this, so we're going to beat you here. And when the margin of error, like you were saying, is so small, the gap is so small, you can't really get away with that all the time. You have to be playing that chess match, right? It's, we talk a lot of especially like line out calls and play calls in general, but you need to take what they're giving you. But you also need to change because they're not going to give you the same thing every single time, right? Talk about the sigmoid performance curves, right? Jumping from that next point. When it starts to dip, that's when you need to make the change. And I think that's the really big key is how can you make those adjustments going there? And I want to throw something over to you to get kind of coach's perspective on it, and then we can get into some of the other games here. But do you think that it is more important to be able to adjust or be able to stick to your game plan? And what I mean by that is so often, we'll be watching Jimbo Fisher comes to mind. I'm thinking of last year especially, but Aggie football. Sorry, I'm zoomed out. That's funky. But the funny thing is, we'll watch somebody and we'll go, "Oh, they didn't make any adjustments." And it's really easy as a fan to say, "Look, they didn't change anything. They should have changed something. That's why they're losing." But I also know that being in that coaching position, a lot of the time, you're not even doing your game plan. When you're losing, it's because you're not doing it right. And so I think there's this really interesting balance there. I'd love to hear your perspective on of, do you double down on trying to get it to do the right thing, or do you change what the thing is entirely?
Well, and I think the first answer is, and you touched on it, is what's your game plan? Are they performing? Are you, and this applies in the business too. Mm-hmm. Are you following the business plan? Right. And if you're following the business plan, then you got a place to adjust off of. Mm-hmm. But if you're not even following the business plan, go back to the game plan, or the way I like to refer to rugby, because it's so fluid. There's, football, you can choreograph, mm-hmm. The first 10 plays of the game. And a lot of teams do that. I mean, we're going to do this, and this.
Yeah.
And, it's rugby. You can't do that. It's just the variables are too many to do that. But what that means is you have to be able to apply your style of play, mm-hmm. which go back to the business. What are my values? What's my plan? What's our core capabilities? Still functions in the same thing on the rugby pitch. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the comments I made about the Irish against South Africa, was they played Irish rugby. And South Africa attempted to continue to play South Africa rugby, and it didn't hold up against them. It wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. They left 8 points on the board or on the pitch, if I remember right. If I remember my math right, it was a conversion and 2 penalties at least that they missed that were at that level makeable.
Yeah.
So that's 8 points. That was the difference in the game. Mm-hmm. So if you do the math on that, should they have changed their style? I don't think so. The pundits are all making fun of the bomb squad and all that, which of course is easy and fun to make fun of. But the thing, and this is a fundamental truth that I learned in coaching rugby, is if you play your game better than they play their game, you will win. And the biggest mistakes, I remember when we were playing, when you were playing for the Grizzlies and I was coaching still, and even after you had graduated and I was coaching, if we didn't play Grizzlies style, we lost.
Yeah.
If we stepped down a level, if we coincided or went to their flow and their style, then we lost the match. But if we played our style, and this is one of the things when you go back and you talk Fiji Wales, you mentioned it very early on how entertaining that was because of the two different styles. Welsh rugby is very traditional, very set forth, strong set pieces. You do this, this, and this. You do this, this, and this. The Fijians, I don't know what the hell they're going to do. They're worse than the French, right? The French play well with Dupont. They're even better at it. They play crazy speed, crazy slow, crazy fast, crazy up and down.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to show up. The Fijians are even more random in that. And that's if the Fijians try to match the Welsh pound for pound, style for style, they would have gotten blown out.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Fijians against Australia. They would have gotten blown out. They would have lost. There's no doubt in my mind. But they stuck to their core values, their core strengths. And that's what enabled them to win, to almost, one knock on, one split second of lost focus, one split second of seeing the green in the try zone and not the white ball coming at them. That split second right there of a knock on was the difference in that entire match. And they learned from that against Australia, and they continued to play to their strength, which I think, going back to, your original question, which was, do I stick to the plan or do I adjust? I say you stick to what your core strengths are. You have to stay in your fundamentals of what you're good at and build on your strengths, build on your wins, but also see the opportunities, but not the opportunities that are outside your core values, your core strengths.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I could go over here and buy a Corvette and get the deliveries faster, but am I able to drive a Corvette and really get the performance out of it to do that?
Yeah, I think that's such a great way of looking at it. Whether we're talking rugby or business, is that understanding of like your strengths, your values, and then how those can play into it. And I think that's what makes it really interesting. Is not only playing to your strengths, but then you talk about defense, but also just depending on your position, depending on your personality. A lot of guys, it's also what can we do to disrupt their style of play. And I think that's where it gets really interesting is you get them to overthink things. You get them to make adjustments when they don't need to be making adjustments. I think that makes it such an interesting chess match there. You already teased this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of segue into the next match, or really not even a match, but Australia is pretty much, again, we already talked before this. We're not going to do pool play math to know the exacts, but they're out. They are pretty much, I don't know if they're mathematically eliminated, I guess is what I'm saying, but they are out of the World Cup. And when you look at a country like that has such a culture of rugby, they have such a rich history and tradition around the sport, I think you go and you scratch your head. You go, okay, what could be so wrong here? And I think talking about business lessons, it's this, it's a lack of commitment to the culture, lack of commitment to the grassroots, and a lack of commitment to the long-term success of a program. Look, Eddie Jones is an amazing coach. I'm not taking anything away from his coaching ability, but it's just like you see in every other sport. There's a big difference of going to get a big-name coach to change everything versus building it up from the start. You already made one Broncos joke. Sorry, here's another one. Sean Payton. Sean Payton is an amazing coach. All right. He might turn around the Broncos eventually. The expectation that he was going to do it this year, that's difficult. right? And I think that's how you have to look at these things of playing that long game. When you talk about developing the sport, obviously I'm passionate about this with my work with the Engage Foundation. I know you're passionate about it too, growing the game. You have to grow the game at all levels to build it up. Makes me think of the social multiplier effect that we've talked about before. When Michael Jordan is on TV playing amazing basketball, every kid that sees that goes, oh my God, I can do that. A lot of those kids won't go do it, but they will try and they will push the other kids. A kid who would have been in the NBA no matter what, because some kid saw Michael Jordan and was attacking him and playing that kind of basketball, that kid now is that much better. Iron sharpens iron. That social multiplier effect when it comes to sports is huge. Just watching rugby makes you so much better because you just see things. This is a funny little example because this would have been like middle school soccer. But I remember when we were in Germany going to see VfB play, our team in Weihingen, right? And I remember watching them score, like every goal they scored in that game was a cross and then somebody just tapped it in backdoor. And I was like, oh, you can do that. And it was literally just this flip of like, oh, okay. And now I'm sure there were other 6th graders, 5th graders out there who could probably do it at the same time. But that's what I mean when you talk about that social multiplier. When you have people around you who are playing at a high level, it helps you to play at that higher level. And I think that's where the development gap really comes from there. This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Evergood Adventure Wine.
Our loyal listeners know Evergood's founder, Matthew Hexter, and our good friend from his appearances on the show that have never disappointed. And Evergood Adventure Wines doesn't disappoint either.
No, it doesn't. Evergood is a craft winery from Colorado that makes wine from lemons, not grapes.
That's right. Picture this, adult lemonade.
Oh yeah, perfect for your next backyard barbecue or hanging out with friends at the beach or the pool. No need to drink a warm red grape wine when it's 100 degrees out or much hotter here in Tucson. Evergood over ice is the perfect refreshment for a hot summer day.
And they come in a variety of flavors, including lemon, strawberry, lime, my favorite for margaritas, grapefruit, and watermelon, which comes in a cool pouch, by the way. These non-carbonated wines check all the boxes. Gluten-free, vegan, low sugar, and low in sulfites. Best of all, they taste damn good, and they have fun names, too.
Yeah, like their OG lemon wine called Skierpy. Yeah, y'all heard that one right, Skierpy. And I'll tell you, Skierpy is also one of my favorites.
Evergood now ships to 41 states, so you can order your lemon wines online at evergoodadventurewines.com.
Plus, Matthew is being kind enough to offer 20% off for all of our listeners. Just use promo code CAM-OTIS at checkout to get 20% off and start enjoying these amazing lemon wines.
So y'all go to evergoodadventurewines.com or click the link in the description in the show. Click Buy Now to redeem your Cam and Otis Show exclusive discount. Oh yeah, well it's I think the best way to put it is you said it. Iron sharpens iron, and one of the experiences that I remember coaching the Grizzlies was we ran through the league like a hot knife through butter, and then we went to a national championship tournament, and we're playing against teams that were at least as good as us. And, there was one or two that were better. And we'd never had that level of competition. And it showed. Yeah. It's the game experience, the real life experience. And here's bringing it around to business. It's would you rather learn everything in a classroom at a university from a professor who's read tons of books and understands the philosophy of it and the academic environments of it and done papers and studies and things like that? Or would you rather work with, deal with, be mentored by, coached by, whatever you want to call it, somebody who's walked the road, who's learned it the hard way? And that's the difference between gameplay or practice and gameplay. I remember talking with James Patterson years ago when he was recovering from one of his injuries before he retired, and just talking about how he could train and train and train in the gym and on the practice pitch, but it never was the same. And he was never in game shape until he actually got on the pitch and got in game shape. And I'm sure you see that with your boys at the U of A right now.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think especially you talk about being game fit. If I haven't said this on the podcast before, it makes me think of John Patterson, right? Talk about James. John is a great coach. We make our joke. My terrible Kiwi accent of "you're not fit. That's why you're not starting on Saturday," right? And he'd always tell us how unfit we were. And I think there's this really funny thing of it's like you're striving for this like fitness. And I think it's really funny because when you are fit, guess what you do during the rugby game? You push yourself. And it's like, yeah, I'm fit, but then I made 10 more tackles than I normally would have, hit 10 more reps than I normally would have. So, of course, I'm going to be just as tired, right? Game fit, I think, is kind of a funny idea like that because you're never quite fit because you push yourself past it, right? But I think when you talk about preparation and preparing for competition, I think this is where one of my favorite parts of rugby and business is you have to be creative with your the way that you innovate there, right? If you're talking about defense, I'll take an easy example here with U of A rugby. We do a drill called Wolfpack defense. It's 11 on 15. Because our top 15 versus the next 15, there's a gap. We're closing that gap. We're always working to improve, raise the floor of the team. That's how you make a great team. But when it really comes down to it, first 15, second 15, there is a gap there. So how do you get
There's a reason there's first 15 and there's a reason there's second 15.
Exactly. And then how do you close that gap, or how do you teach them to perform at that higher level if the person they're playing isn't at that high level? When you handicap them. We play a 15 on 11 defensive drill all the time because it teaches you that you're going to be dealing with extra. How many times have I done mauls or scrums where I'm giving the second 15? There was a maul drill last year. I gave them 12 guys and said, stop it. Stop them all. And you know what? James in that first squad forwards, shout out to James in the MLR now, but they were able to drive it forward a little bit. They didn't get it all the way down the field. Of course they couldn't. They were going up against 12 guys. But what it did is it made them stress that. And the reason I mention that is because when you talk about it in the business context, you have to find ways to challenge yourself to get better, right? Whether it's changes to the schedule, changes to the personnel, challenging people. You talk about cross training a lot, challenging people to do jobs that are outside of their wheelhouse a little bit. There's lots of different ways that you can look at it, but it's about finding your way to get that competition. My daily Stoic passage today, they made I'm totally paraphrasing on this, but they're talking about the same kind of concept of, challenging yourself to break that mold because one day you will be challenged. And I think that's one really important thing to do in business. Somebody is going to get sick. You need to be ready for when they're sick. Practicing the speeches, whatever it is, there's things that you can do to raise your competitive level. We talk about in sports a lot, if you're going to go play in a loud environment, you bring the speakers to practice, right? Okay, well, if you have a speech you're giving, Dad, I know you just booked the big keynote speech, right? If you have a speech you're going to give and you're worried about distractions, get some barking dogs. Go ask your wife to go sit in front of you and talk on the phone the entire speech. It's like there's things you can do. Is that what's going to happen when you're giving that speech? No. Are you going to play 11 and 15 on a rugby game? No, you're not. Well, I hope not, unless you get 4 red cards.
Ooh, that'd be rough.
But you're finding these creative ways to continue to innovate and push yourself. And I think that's where it gets I think that's the biggest lesson that we could draw from that comparison there is what can you do to improve yourself beyond what you are now? You don't have the means necessarily, but you can find a creative solution to still push yourself.
Yeah. Well, and what comes to mind for me on the business side is the blue ocean strategy, right? So I'm in a blue ocean. I've set myself apart. I'm the one and only sort of thing, waving the flag. I'm the only and the best, the first and only and the best. But that only lasts for so long. So how do you continue to improve? How do you continue to get better? It also lends itself into sports. The wonderful comparisons that we all love to do with, and you hear it the most in NFL pundits because they run out of things to say because they have so many hours to fill. But, I think he is just like Aaron Rodgers is just like Roger Staubach in his 3rd year. You remember when he did this and they do all these sort of things. But the reality is if we had a time machine and we took Terry Bradshaw, Roger Staubach in their prime, and we dropped them into the NFL, right? I mean, took them straight out of 1979 and dropped them into the Dallas Cowboys and the Steelers right now, they'd get crushed because everything has moved forward. Everything has moved forward, and that's the same in any sport that's worth its salt, or otherwise, it gets boring because everybody's doing the same thing over and over again. Heck, even chess, people get it better and better. And how many variables are there in chess? I mean, it's the same damn board, 64 squares or whatever. No, it's more than 64. However many squares there are and however many pieces there are, it's the same thing, but it keeps getting harder and more innovative.
Yeah.
And that's part of what keeps it entertaining. And that's what keeps your business successful. That's why we watch sports year after year, because we're like, man, what are they going to do now? Because the flying T was the thing 50 plus years ago, maybe 60 years ago. And then it was the power I formation. And then it was the split back and the shotgun. And it's changing, man. It's changing. And, rugby, the same thing. We're kicking the laws change and the player ability changes. You have to continue to innovate, and that's how you continue to be successful.
Yeah,
you establish the foundation of fundamentals, whatever we're talking about, business or sport. You establish that foundation and you build on that foundation, but you never allow that foundation to crumble. Because if your house, folks in Fort Worth, folks on the west side of Colorado Springs, if you allow that foundation to crumble, to start to settle and crack, guess what your house is going to do? That fancy roof you got on ain't going to be there no more, right? It's going to start leaking. And so you got to do the fundamentals.
Yeah, and I think the easy rugby example for our rugby listeners out there, which I think I kind of had a little bit of an epiphany on this. Maybe people have been seeing it before, but talking about the innovation in the game, obviously the law changes and those are a really big piece. But how many trick plays off of lineouts do you see in an average game now? That used to be so basic, and it was like it was like a flea. This is the example I was talking with a friend on Saturday. It used to be like a flea flicker, where it was like, okay, here's the one play where when we need the touchdown, we're going to run the flea flicker. Hey, when we need a try, we're going to run the slip maul. And it's become something where it's like, look, the regular maul defense has gotten so good that you have to play into these different areas. And you have to continue to innovate. And I think that's a big lesson for business. I'm sure there's some, really funny examples. We could talk about Kmart, Blockbuster, whatever. But if you just stick to what you're doing and you talk about the foundation. If you only focus on that foundation and you never try to build up, then you're going to wind up failing because the world is going to be changing around you. Just like the sport is always changing, business is always changing. I think there's this really funny thing. I think the NFL is probably the worst at it. Rugby sevens is worse at it than 15s, but it's the imitation game of, you won the last World Series tournament and you played this style of rugby. Therefore, we're going to start playing this style of rugby. And that's the equivalent of trying to completely change your business model every time you hear about somebody's success. Oh, did you hear, such and such is out there. He's only marketing on YouTube Shorts, and he actually has made $10 million this month. So you need to start marketing on YouTube Shorts. Or somebody, by the way, if you haven't met those people, there's someone like that for every possible marketing solution, right? Because you can have all these different things. They all can be successful, but it's about what works best for your business, what works best for your team. And I wanted to shift gears a little bit, finish up our recap on this. We can go a little bit lightning round here. But the other piece, other two big games from this last week of rugby, for us, of course, we got to talk Scotland-Tonga real quick. And for me, Scotland can play very good rugby. And when they commit to their system, we talk about France, we talk about Ireland, Wales. Really, just European rugby is the best offensive rugby in the world right now. Just the creativity is amazing, and I think that's
what is ironic because it didn't used to be.
Right? No, it used to be kick tennis. It really used to be kick tennis, but no, they've innovated a lot. And what's funny about that is then you're seeing these Southern Hemispheres teams, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, who used to play a little bit more, just take the basic example, pod, spin type of rugby, and just beat them up with really simple but really good fundamentals. It's not working anymore. The game has changed. And I think that's what's going to be interesting going forward with France. Can they continue to not necessarily innovate, but they continue to push their level of play and keep it at that high level without Antoine Dupont? Now, I don't know if you got a chance to talk with my older sister, your daughter, about how long it takes to come back from a fractured orbital, if I have that right. But I saw a headline that said he's getting surgery and they're awaiting his return. I was like, okay, if you're getting surgery, it's going to be a little while. Might be semifinal, might be final down the road, if they make that stretch. But could you talk some about what it's like in that team environment when you lose that fundamental player and what that could do and what kind of adjustments France might want to make?
Well, that's when you have a level like that. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? First 15, second 15. There's a reason he's in the first 15. There's a reason he's the starting 9 and probably the best 9 in the world. How do you fill those shoes? Well, you've worked with the guy, and I don't know his name. I don't know the backup's name off the top of my head, but there's something that has to happen in his head, because you see it occasionally. Well, not occasionally. I mean, there's stories about greatness showing up that wasn't there until it needed to be there.
Yeah.
And that's what has to happen. So the team it's a team effort. So the team has to gather around that guy, wish I knew his name, the Dupont replacement. They have to gather around him, make sure that he knows that they all believe in him wholeheartedly and fully. And then he has to deal with the pressure. Mm-hmm. And he has to be who he is. This goes back to playing your style of rugby, right?
Yep.
It's not just the team, it's the individual. Mm-hmm. He cannot fill Dupont's shoes. He can wear the number 9, but he won't be Dupont. Mm-hmm. He has to play his style. What pops to mind, and I can only think of one of Aaron Smith for the All Blacks. Mm-hmm. And
Perenara, not Perenara. I said that like I'm going to get a lunch at Panera. But TJ
yes.
Perenara, yeah.
And just their different styles of play. Mm-hmm. That's critical. And as a coach, you also have to be aware of that and what kind of style and matchup. Mm-hmm. Back to the fundamentals and playing our game. But I think for France, that's going to be key. Yeah. Is the team has to step up as a team, because they already know the guy, because he's already in the pack, right? He's part of the 30-man traveling squad. He was probably part of the 23, I'm guessing. And he's probably been on the pitch, sometime. I mean, he definitely finished the last match because Dupont went down and somebody had to step in. So he's been on the pitch. They know him, but they still have to step in there and say, hey, Pierre, hey, Jean-Luc. Hey, Jean-Luc. We'll just call him Jean-Luc. Hey, Jean-Luc, we got you, man. We're going to play your style. We're going to adapt. Dupont, yes, greatest, probably the greatest halfback France has ever seen. But you could be even better. Mm-hmm. And that kind of pump up, not from the coaches, because coaches are going to say that bullshit. They're going to be blowing smoke up all day long.
Yep.
Hey, Jean-Luc, man, we got you, dude, man. You are so good. Mm-hmm. This is your moment. You've been training your whole life. Da, 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 da. Yeah. All that does is put more bugs in the guy's ear. The mates on the pitch are the ones that are going to make the difference for him, are the ones that are going to change just a wee bit. Yeah. Take that half step in, that half step back. That's where the difference is going to be made. They're going to adapt their style to his style within the French style of rugby.
Yeah, and I think that's the big piece is the adjustments, but making sure those adjustments are small enough that you're not moving away from the fundamentals of your team. You can talk about it in business. If you have a sales guy who's out sick and you got, somebody in training, right? To take the first and second 15 example for it, which you're not going to see exactly in business a lot, but let's say our sales guy is out And so we're sending, I'm stepping in for the sales guy. I'm not great at sales. And so, what can we do to make his job easier? What can we do to adjust to play into their talents, to play into their specific, personality in that way? And I think that's the really big key for those kind of adjustments is understanding your team. Whether we're talking overall strategy or making those adjustments, if you don't understand your team, business or rugby, then you're going to put them in the wrong position. The way that you get great players is you put them in the right position to achieve. I think to take a quick NFL example, I think we've seen this a bunch. My favorite example of it, because he's an Aggie, was Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill, what he's done with the Titans, what he did with the Titans, it was really interesting because they were a solid team that came in, got a solid quarterback, and they didn't try to have him be a gunslinger. They just kept it simple, and he only had to throw 40% of the time because they had Derrick Henry, but he could throw 40% of the time. If you throw him in to a system where he's going to be bombing it down the field, he would look terrible. But you play to his strengths, you keep hitting those slants, and you just say, hey, the slants are working, keep hitting the slants. Ryan hasn't missed a slant. Then we keep playing that, and you play what you're able to do there. And I think that's the big piece there. I want to shift gears a little bit, though, looking forward, okay, talking next week first. And if you have any comments on this, jump in. But my 2 games to watch looking into this next week of pool play is Chile and Argentina and Japan, Samoa. Both of those are teams who are striving to take that next step. For Japan and Argentina, they are, I guess you call them like that tier 1.5. They're trying to make that step up to tier 1. For Chile and Samoa, they're more in that tier 2, trying to make that next step. But the great thing is there's parity between these teams. These are 4 very good rugby teams. And there's that regional combativeness. So you got 2 Pacific teams, 2 South American teams. And I'm expecting some very great rugby out of those. Those are my picks to watch this weekend.
Fiji, Georgia. And in a similar fashion, the Georgians are known for their scrum, their power forward pack. And the Fijians are no small men, believe me. No. But they still have this beautiful finesse about the game. And I think it's a similar thing as we had Fiji, Wales. But the difference is that Georgia is a up-and-coming tier 2 that is continuously right on the cusp of breaking in. They are, God, I'm trying to think. They came really close with Italy. They've given Scotland a hard time in some matchups. You're never quite sure if that was the full A squad.
Right.
But I think that one for me has some great interest because of just the Georgians and how they've been playing rugby.
That's going to be
for so many years.
It's going to be a hard hitting game. Yeah. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is from like the coaching perspective, I think it's really interesting to watch Fiji play that game because now they're not playing up, they're playing down a little bit. And that is always a really challenging team. When your business is in downtime, what are you doing to keep improving, right? When you're playing a team that's at a lower level, what can you do to continue to innovate, continue to push yourself rather than playing down to the competition? So I think that'll be a big piece there. But I want to shift gears, go into our predictions on this. So we already said, we're not doing public math. We're not getting into pool play math. If anybody has ever been part of a sevens tournament, you will get the pool play math wrong and you will have to adjust your plans because that's happened to me about 3 different tournaments I could think of. So I want to go ahead and throw it to Pool A. So my 2 picks making it out of Pool A, I go France and New Zealand. I think that New Zealand still is, you can't completely count them out. And then also just looking at the lineup there, New Zealand is going to beat out Italy, Uruguay, and Namibia, in my opinion. What they're able to do in the quarterfinals, to me, that's the bigger question mark. But any thoughts on Pool A?
No, that's the easiest one I think out there. Honestly, I mean it's New Zealand's only played 2 matches so far. They've got their 3rd match tomorrow. Is it tomorrow that they got their 3rd match?
No, Wednesday, I think. Or I guess today. Don't play the tomorrow game because this comes out later.
Yeah. So the 27th. So they got their 3rd match, and that that after the way they whooped up on Namibia, I think it'll be no problem for for New Zealand, and it'll be New Zealand, France, and Pool A, and then Pool B. Woo! The game, the next. I think you said this. I think we were still in the green room when you said this. The next game to watch will be Scotland, Ireland.
The next, I want to make an adjustment because we got games to watch this weekend. They're going to be good, but we talked Wales, Fiji, most exciting game of rugby. South Africa, Ireland, another just amazing game of rugby. Scotland, Ireland has that potential. It definitely does.
Yeah, it does. I mean, here they are, the two island nations in the United Kingdom. Mm-hmm. They play each other every Six Nations, and they'll be doing that again here in about 4 months. And Scotland's kind of been that just a little bit behind them, a little bit just off. I think they just lost. It was like on a heartbreaker in Six Nations last year. Kind of that they had that almost the Fiji Wales sort of heartbreaker, the knock on at the last minute sort of thing that sealed their fate. But the safe bet continues to be Ireland and South Africa in that match. I mean, it would be hard to bet against those two in Pool B.
Yeah, I think that's definitely who will probably make it out of it. We already said we're not doing pool play math. I think it would be amazing if Scotland is able to beat Ireland, and then we're going to all have to be doing that pool play math. Just jumble it up a bit. And I think that's always fun in the pool play where you get those top three teams all beating each other. But I think the really interesting thing for me in the Scotland-Ireland matchup is Scotland's big problem has been, to your point earlier, of breaking their mold, not playing their style of rugby. We saw it against South Africa. They were kicking a lot. So Scotland doesn't usually kick that much. They like to use the kick as an attacking motion. We already talked about European rugby, right? Use the kick. It's a big piece of the game, but they were overusing it in that match. And then, you and I watched several Six Nations games together. And one of the things that you and I both kept bringing up was the lack of patience. And I think what you have to do when you play a good offensive rugby is you have to be able to, one, make gain line, even if it's just that little bit so you can get some momentum moving forward. But you have to be patient. You have to be willing to play 15-phase rugby. And that's one thing that we saw from Ireland against South Africa this weekend. I think one of their tries came off of a 13, 14, 15-phase somewhere in there. Yeah. And I think the really interesting piece here is, one, you're getting two offensive powerhouses in Scotland and Ireland. If you're betting the World Cup, bet the over on that one probably. But is Ireland going to be able to bring the line speed to go slow down the Scots enough? Because that's what South Africa was able to do. South Africa tried to slow down Ireland, couldn't quite get to it. So how is Scotland going to be adjust there? But that is going to be a great game. And, I think it would be really cool to see Scotland win that one just to mess up the pool and just, jumble that all up. But then moving into Pool C. So I've got Wales and Fiji. I think it's still technically talking about mathematically possible. I think that might still be up in the air a little bit, but I think this is another easy one like Pool A. I got Wales and Fiji coming up.
Yeah, I mean, after Australia losing twice, I mean, I don't see how they could mathematically get in. And good on Fiji. This will be the first ever for them to advance out of pool play in the World Cup after winning the gold medal. What was that? The last Summer Olympics. Yeah. So that would have been 2020, the last Summer Olympics, and they won the gold medal. I mean, what an amazing feat for the nation, not just a rugby nation, but that nation entirely. So amazing heart there. And then, Pool D, just, who do we always root against? England. Everybody's united. We root against England.
Wait, yes. I want to make a point on England because I think this is really funny. We're talking so much about how exciting European rugby is. And, I think it has a lot to do with Pro 14 and the development there, Six Nations, all that. Super high level of competition. Great offensive rugby. God damn, England can be boring. That England-Argentina game put me to sleep.
Yeah, no doubt. And, but I don't see them not making it out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, at this point, they got 3 wins, so they're in. The big one, and this will be the fun one for us to debate a little bit as we wrap up the show, Samoa, Japan, or Argentina. Again, not doing pool play math, so sorry out there for everyone who knows the exact stuff of this. But from what I can see on there, they're all still in it. That second spot out of Pool D is pretty open between the three. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, Argentina will take care of Chile. Sorry, Chile. You are not at that level in Argentina. They did not play up to their level of play against England. I'll just say that in my belief of watching them play before. Where Japan fits in with that kind of goes back to the last weekend, I guess. Then, right? Japan, Argentina. That'll be win or go home.
Yeah,
match is what that'll be on the not this weekend, but the next. So the 8th or something like that. That's what's going to happen, and it's going to be amazing to watch that. And I just, I don't have a prediction on that because both of them have the potential, and I just don't think they played up to their potential in the first match.
I think one of them. I totally agree with that assessment. To me, Argentina is plateauing or on a little bit of a decline, whereas where I think Japan has a little bit of an advantage is I don't think their level of play has dropped as much as they're getting respect. And I think that's what's changed for Japan over the last, 8 years, I guess, since that was that big win 8 years or 4 years ago? It would have been 4 years, I guess. But that big upset Japan over South Africa. Oh, no, because it's South Africa. All right, I'm messing this all up. I'm sorry. I'm playing memory.
It was in Japan. I thought it was in Japan that they won.
Okay, all right. So then it would have been that game. But anyway, the point being, Japan is a team that is now respected, and so they're getting the better game plans. They're getting the harder attacks and those kind of things. And so I think they're getting tested more than they have in the past. But I would take Japan as my second person out of Pool D, or second team out of Pool D. And then without playing the quarterfinals game, because again, that takes pool play math, I want to just go out of our 8 that we talked about right there, who you got winning it all.
This episode of the Cam and Otis Show is brought to you by Tribe and Purpose.
Are you tired of dealing with the cost of bad leadership? It's time to make a change.
The Green Beret Leadership Program is your key to unlocking the full potential of your team.
By using GBLP to develop leaders in your business, you'll get a proactive and responsible team that embraces challenges, takes calculated risks, and takes action without constant supervision.
Developing great leaders can take a lot of time and energy, and that's why businesses tend to opt for the trial by fire and the school of hard knocks path to leadership. The truth is that wastes time and money. And folks, there's never enough of either one of those, and puts lots of extra stress on your leadership team.
Oh yeah, and that stress has lots of bad outcomes for your team. Poor leadership drives away your quality talent, and the longer you wait to fix the problem, the more talent you're going to lose and the more money you're going to lose.
With the Green Beret Leadership Program, you can use battle-tested leadership principles of the Green Berets to develop great leaders in your team faster than with the School of Hard Knocks. You'll see changes in just a few short weeks.
And the longer you wait to take action, the more damage poor leadership can do and will do to your business.
Learn more about the impact of GBLP, that's the Green Beret Leadership Program, can have on your business, and schedule your free coaching call with the Green Beret coach. That's me, folks, Otis. Now at findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP. I'll say it again, findyourpurpose.coach/GBLP, or you can click the link in the description below.
Y'all, don't leave your team to struggle alone on their own. If you're not giving them the tools they need to be great, then they're not going to be great. You can't expect them to. So give them the tools they need to be successful.
Who do I believe is going to win, or who do I want to win?
Well, go both.
Well, I think it would be amazing for France to win on their home ground in Stade de France, right there in Paris. My buddy Frank, not Frank Wynn, my French buddy Frank. Hopefully he can get tickets and he's there. Jean Christophe. He's not as big of a rugby guy as Frank is, but I could see both of them there in that stadium, and then the chaos that would follow.
Oh yeah.
I think that's the sentimental.
Mm-hmm.
The team that I think is going to catch everybody, which they shouldn't, off guard, is going to be the All Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they lost against France. They lost to South Africa in Twickenham right before the tournament. And I can't remember because they had lost one more, I thought,
Mm-hmm.
before that. It's like first time in 3 years or forever that they've lost 3 in a row.
Yeah.
You can't discount them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's too much understanding
mm-hmm.
of the game at all levels, at a high level. And what I mean by all levels, from the director of rugby right down to the water boy,
Mm-hmm.
And, the equipment operator sort of thing. The level is so much higher than everybody else in that organization that I think that gives them an advantage.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is my take coming into this World Cup, was that they're going to make the adjustments off those losses. They lost to France, so they didn't make those adjustments quite yet. But I do think that is something where it's like when you look at all of these teams, really. But when a great team loses, that's where you can really see that next level, because they get shown their mistakes. But I think my pick, I think I'm going to go Ireland. Just that attacking rugby has just been so good. I think there's a great storyline with it too. They have traditionally not done very well at World Cups, even though they are consistently a great team. They haven't done well at the World Cup stage. I think they're showing that they can do that now. But the real piece for it, as the forwards coach, as the guy who loves, I would bet on Ireland coming to this game. I was thinking they were going to win. I was kind of rooting for them. But as I was watching, I was like, I want South Africa to win, just because the bomb squad and all that and the lineouts. And I just love my forward pack rugby. But seeing Ireland successfully, not dismantle necessarily, but successfully combat the South African forward pack, that to me shows that they're able to play at that level also. We talked about being able to play your game versus playing somebody else's game. You have to be able to play your game at a high level, which Ireland was able to do. And then you have to, at the same time, disrupt the opposition's play. That's the secret to success. And they were able to do that. I mean, how poetic is it that they were able to turn over a maul to end the game? Now, the ball was kind of playable. I hated that because it made it a gray area. I wish that ball wasn't playable and they would have just ended on that, or they would have gotten it out and whoever wins, I don't care. But it was a little lackluster of a finish for me. But I think that's a very poetic thing for Ireland to be able to do that. So that's my pick overall. If we're going emotional ones, I mean, I'll throw Scotland and Fiji there just for the heck of it. I mean, how amazing would it be to watch Fiji go on a run? And then, I mean, I know you and I would be, you, me, and Gerard Butler, because he's doing all the promo stuff, would be so excited for Scotland.
That's right, he is. I saw a great one I guess it was this morning on Instagram, and he did his "This is Scotland."
Oh, you got it.
And he's just laughing. I don't remember who he was with. It was one of those guy hands the mic. You could tell he kind of prodded him to get him to do it. And
oh yeah,
it was awesome. It was awesome. Well, I tell you what, the learning on this one's a little tough, but it's the reemphasis of something I've always had a passion for, and that's the fundamentals. When we were talking earlier, I was actually thinking about, I think it was Bruce Lee that talks about it also, and the way that you win is you do the fundamentals better than anybody else. And as long as you are better, you don't, I think back to the coaching days and other coaches, they're wanting to do all these sort of fancy off the top spins and scissors and all this stuff. And I'm like, no, tackle, win the ball, win the ruck, win the ball, get the ball, pass it, run, pass it, run, pass it, run. Don't drop the ball, right? I mean, protect the golden egg. It's fundamental.
Got to protect the golden egg, right?
Yeah. Camden, what'd you learn?
Yeah, I think for me, this is a reiteration of something that I thought during that South Africa-Ireland game. But it's about the individual efforts of minimizing those mistakes. There's a funny example of this, and I will be talking about this in a couple hours out at practice. Eben Etzebeth getting absolutely manhandled, and that attacking line inside their 22.
Oh, by Francois Lowe, I think this is his name. The man bun guy from Ireland.
Yeah, I think he.
When
I don't know.
picked him up?
They had 3 or 4 guys on him, but I think
Well, but it was Francois Lowe
That
who
picked
went
him up?
in low and picked him up. Yeah, Eben Etzebeth, one of the biggest men in rugby
Yeah.
right now.
And I think
Yeah.
there's, I think I said this to a friend on Saturday about it, and this is what I'm going to say at practice today. Doesn't matter if you're the biggest, baddest man on the planet, because Eben Etzebeth might be. Like, sorry, Tyson Fury, we're talking rugby. Eben Etzebeth might be the biggest, baddest man on the planet. He's definitely in that top 10, right? If you run up high, you're going to get hit. If you get low, I would say run like a skinny guy. Run low. If you run smart, then you don't get in that situation. It doesn't matter if you're the biggest, baddest guy. If you go try to run someone over, they're professional athletes too. There's the joke in the NFL. They always say this: defensive guys get paid too, right? They're there to stop you. They are professional athletes just like you. You got to make sure that you are playing smart, not trying to do something big, not trying to overextend yourself. And I think, we talked a lot of business lessons too. I think that's a big piece also, is that you can't overextend yourself. You got to play the smart moves. You got to understand your fundamentals, build on those. And then, like you said, go towards that blue ocean, go towards the smartest area of the game, and then build out from there.
Awesome.
I think I might connected the dots. I think I got pretty close to all of our dots.
There's at least a dash line there.
Yes, sir.
All right, Cam, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of the show. See, I need to write a second one because I always want to say, and thank you to our guest, and there ain't no guest, so I don't know why I do that every time. All right. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at The Cam and Otis Show. Make sure you're subscribing there too. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to share it with other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again, and we'll see y'all next time.